everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel. And today I have another video for you all. Today, we are going to be talking about the story of how I got started in kink. Because even though I have been making videos for 9 years now, or maybe 8 years, I have not actually sat down and told you all the full story. And I know I have a lot of new people here in the channel who are just now getting into exploring kink, and it might be helpful for all of you to know what my initial journey looked like. So we're going to talk about sort of the process of discovering kink and learning about it all the way up to going to my first few events and like my first kink relationships. So initially, what you need to know is that I was raised Catholic. So just insert what you feel like that means here. I was raised Catholic, and I thankfully I did not go to like Catholic school. I did not have a lot of explicitly anti-sex conversations in the culture at the time. And with how I was raised and where I went to school, there was certainly a message of only do abstinence. If you do anything, you're gonna die of all these terrible diseases and you'll be dirty and it's like gross and bad and wrong. And, you know, there was not a lot of positive messaging about even just vanilla sex, let alone anything kinky whatsoever. And because I was asexual, I did not have any sort of like natural inclinations to like Google things and like explore my own. And I found out much later in my life that apparently everyone else on earth who was like Googling boobs and like looking up porn, and I just was not doing any of that. I just was like reading my books about horses and the Warrior series and just thinking about school, and like I was blissfully ignorant of apparently what every one of my peers was obsessed with. So I didn't have that phase earlier on in my life. And when I got to college, I decided that I wanted to try and intentionally break down what I had been taught and really actually learn for the first time, okay, what is actually true about sex, and is it really that big of a deal, and do I like it or not? Because right now, I don't really think I care, but like, it's worth it to explore. Because at that point in time, I had been exposed to asexuality, and my kink and asexuality journey are very much tied up together, which is why I'm talking about it. I had been exposed to asexuality, and I did know someone in high school, actually we dated, that it turned out was both aromantic and asexual. And so I saw that and thought, oh, that's how being ace is. And because like I wanted to do things like kiss and hold hands and they didn't, like I thought, oh, well, I can't be ace. So that led to some delays in realizing things until later on, especially also being like a hormonal teenager and things with that. And then, you know, getting into adulthood, maybe having some different feelings about certain things, which I feel like people don't like to talk about, but is a factor in at least my experience as well. So I get into college and I decide I want to start breaking down what I learned and start actually from the ground up really figuring out what this whole sex thing is about. And at the time on YouTube, people like Lacey Green were really popular. Sexplanations hadn't started yet, I don't think, but like maybe 2 or 3 years after that, she started making videos as well. So I was like really big into them, and I followed Lacey's Tumblr blog and I was reading all of her posts, and that was really helpful for me for like discovering basic things about sex ed. And I attended some classes on my college campus that were hosted talking about like different types of lubes and condoms and how to talk about STIs. And I was like not engaging sexually at this point with anyone. I was strictly just learning, and I really wanted to know like, okay, like if I want to go to a store and like pick out like condoms, what do I do? And I think that was really helpful as a starting point for me, just to have, it seemed at the time like so, not even scary, but like revolutionary to even have a conversation about that, because it was so the opposite of what I had growing up. Like I don't even think we had a banana model. I just think they talked about using condoms, and then went, but don't actually have sex though, because that's bad. And that was the extent of it. So I was really grateful for that. And as I was going through this exploratory process, I also started to think more about kink, because I had had fantasies from not like a super young age. I don't think for most people, like when I was in high school, I had fantasies about doing kink. And okay, we're being real in this video. So we're confession time. When I was in high school, so I'm very glad, like, people who know me in real life and from that time period don't watch my YouTube channel. When I was in high school, not knowing that kink was a thing that people actually did, I exchanged dog collars with my boyfriend, and we would put them on each other and wear them when we were making out. And if that's not a sign, like, I'm literally crying. I'm literally crying because thinking about this is so embarrassing / funny. If that's not a sign, I don't know what would have been. Oh my God, so embarrassing. So that was a thing that happened. And I didn't think that kink was something that people actually did. I thought everyone was like me, and it was a little fantasy that we kept inside of our mind palaces, and maybe we talked about it with a partner, but like, no one did it for real. You just kind of skirted around the edges, because like how would you actually do any of that in real life? Well, it turns out, as you and my audience know already, you can't actually do that in real life. So I was revisiting those ideas, and I was like, well, actually, if I can like do this for real, like maybe I want to like actually try this out in real life at some point. Now, this whole process took like a couple of years, like 2 or 3 years of like me exploring. And initially I really just pushed on like exploring vanilla sexuality and like learning about like masturbation, because I had never even thought about doing that before. I didn't even know that like I could do that with my body parts. I just thought that was only for penises. So that was also a very interesting experience to learn about like as an adult. But like it does happen, and that's partly why I'm talking about this, is because I know that many of us, either because of how we were raised or just maybe we have a lot of anxiety around sex, we don't ever explore any of these things or think about them. And it's totally normal to get into kink and to get into just human sexuality from not really knowing a whole lot. And I did that, and now look at what my job is. So it works out. It works out. So I spent a lot of time, my first couple of years of college, really just trying to figure out vanilla sexuality and being constantly disappointed by it at every possible turn. And I actually got into kink around the time. Actually, it wasn't even around the time. It was like distinct moment. I was seeing this guy, and we'd been dating, I think, for like less than a year. And we decided to break up because we weren't really that compatible, and like we fought all the time, and it was like it wasn't like unhealthy, it just like we weren't compatible. So we broke up. And towards the end of that relationship, I had started to think more seriously about trying kink, and I had a friend who went to a different school in a different city, and they were telling me about how where they lived, there was a sex positive community, and that if I wanted to explore my sexuality, I should try to look for that. And I didn't, again, theme here, I didn't read between the lines. I didn't realize that sex positive center meant a kink venue for doing BDSM stuff in. I thought it was more like a sex club, which I feel like a lot of people would assume would be the case, like not even necessarily orgies, but just like, you know, people hanging out and having sex and then drinking some root beer. I don't know. Like, I didn't really have a frame of reference for what that might even look like. I thought more like comfortable, like solo play, but in a group, maybe getting into partnered / group activities. I don't know. So I actually looked that up, and turns out there was a version of that, like sort of type of community where I lived. And I went to their website, and then they had this thing on their website called Fetlife. And I was like, oh, what's that? So I went on Fetlife, and I made an account so I could see their events. And then I kind of just dove into kink from that point onward. I took the BDSM test, and right at the top, I think it was like pet play, submissive, some primal play stuff for sure. I don't know what the exact order the top 5 were, but the top 5 were like a puppy play, pet play, submission, and then different kinds of primal play, because I think they separated between primal predator and primal prey, and then like bondage, like rope bunny or whatever they called it at that point in time. So I did the BDSM test and I found all that, and I was like, oh, there's like this whole world. And I found articles from, I think there was the submissive guide and the dominant guide were still making content on their websites, and I found that stuff because I discovered pet play and primal play, and I googled that and I was like, oh, what are these things about? And so primal play really made sense with a lot of the fantasies that I had, and submission did as well. And I was like, oh, well, I want to like find people that will do this. And so I had been doing this kind of initial exploration into like what kink is and being on Fetlife. And I started to like secretly see kinks in other people all the time, which is why I warn people to not fall for that when they're new. Because I know I did that, where when I discovered the secret code to unlock kink, I suddenly thought that everyone around me had like secret kinks. Don't think that way. That's not productive. And a lot of people are, in fact, actually vanilla. So it's not, don't go there. So I got into that. And then I broke up with my vanilla boyfriend, and we decided to no longer see each other anymore. And like, I don't think I said it at the time to him directly, but certainly part of it for me was like, I really wanted to explore kink, and our relationship was not going in that direction at all. So I got rid of my boyfriend, and I got really involved on Fetlife and got really involved in the community. And actually, I may have made a Fetlife account after we broke up. I don't remember exactly what order that happened in, but I was definitely exploring kink before we broke up. But I think maybe actually I hadn't made an account until after we broke up. I'd have to look at the dates to remember for sure, but it was in pretty close order, all of this happening. So we broke up, I got on Fetlife, I posted some photos, and because I was still in a college town at the time and I was still in university, I was pretty easily able to like see that other people my age were doing this, and there were groups for it, and like, oh my god, this is actually something that people really do in real life. So I joined some groups, and actually this is yet another learning lesson for people that are listening to this right now. When I was brand new, I didn't know anyone, because I didn't know anyone in real life at that point who did kink. I just knew this was like a social media thing, and I got on it. And I was messaged very soon after making an account by someone that went to my school, and I just didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, somebody's like reaching out to me. I didn't think at that point how they would have found that I was a brand new account. What they were probably doing is they were trawling the website to see when anyone made a new account within like a certain geographical area, and they were probably just messaging anyone who made an account. Maybe they were being somewhat selective about it in terms of age or gender or what, but you know, I think that's probably how they found me, which is not good news, because Fetlife makes it very difficult on purpose to use their site itself to like find new accounts or find people by a certain age demographic, which I think is healthy for the website, but I didn't know what to think about it. And I had trouble using the site because it is archaic, and it was then and it is now, and they were actually able to help me navigate the site and like know what to do for like setting up a profile and putting more photos on there and like how to caption things. And actually it was really nice to have that. And I ended up like meeting up with them in person, and we met, I think, actually at one of the first munches I went to was on campus at my university, and it was a classic like basement coffee house. It was maybe like 5 to 7 people, and some of them were people who went to my school. Some of them had graduated and were still there to kind of keep the munch going. It actually did not end up going on for very much longer after the first couple times I went. So we met up, and then we started to do things together, and I went over to their apartment, and because they were advertising themselves as this like dom, we did not have like a DS relationship, but he agreed to like be my trainer basically and like help me like explore certain things. So I would go over, and then he would like show me certain things and be like, oh, like today we're gonna try like rough body play. Today, we're going to try sensory deprivation. Today, we're going to try bondage. And we did some things that I would not advise new people to do with somebody that they don't really know that well in their apartment alone. Now I know better. By the time, there were not the resources we have today, and I didn't have any access to community yet because I had not actually gone to the big event space in a local area, and I thought I was meeting good people, and I just kind of took their word for it because they seemed nice, and I was like, I was 20, 21 maybe. I didn't know what I was doing. We would do things outside of kink. It wasn't just that. Like, we would do like social dance together because there was like a social dance club on my campus. We went to go do that. But mostly our relationship was like platonic plus kink. And this is where I actually get into accidentally doing polyamory without realizing I was doing polyamory. Now, at this point, I had discovered through going to like vanilla, like classic college house parties, that I was not interested in vanilla sex or hookups or any part of that culture. I really just wanted to like meet people and hang out, and I was not finding that at all. It felt very alienating to be in vanilla social situations. And joining the kink community was genuinely the first time that I really felt like people wanted to know the full me and that I could be my full self with them and that they would respect that. So I got into kink. I had this one person who was a trainer. And then I actually, before I met the person who'd be like my second partner, I went to my first actual dungeon party. And unfortunately, this dungeon is no longer around. It's very sad they shut down a couple of years ago, but they were really good about it. They had like newbie nights. They had regular dungeon parties. They had classes. It was like, it was such a good first environment to be in. I'm so grateful that they were around. I got like a little membership card I still have. It's like a really great memento. And yeah, it was really fun to get to do all of that. And I went to one of my first parties, which was a pet play party, and they had like a pen, and I met so many different people that were different kinds of pets. And maybe actually before I get into sharing like what the event was like, I'll kind of like walk you through the space. So just so like if you're new to kink and you're like, what is a dungeon actually like? You can know. So it really depends on where you live, but oftentimes in America, dungeons will be in industrial zoned areas because of rules about like how far away you have to be from certain types of facilities, or just where the least expensive commercial real estate is that has the kind of square footage and openness you need to have a kink venue at. It was a very like open floor plan warehouse environment. They had like sort of a small initial entry area where they checked you in, they checked ID, they had like a lending library, they had different items on display. I think there were people who ran like a online kink shop that displayed items for sale in like a glass display case. And basically you'd go through, you'd get a membership. It was like $80, I think. And then you'd pay, I think like 10 or $15 for like every party after that. And then people could guest you in. And it was all very nice. They had like you sign like a waiver and, you know, you're not going to sue them if something happens and all the usual stuff you get when you're signing disclaimer forms. So there's that. And then you go back to a second area and there was curtains, and then there were lockers, like red middle school lockers, and you could about like fit a coat into them, maybe a small handbag. And then after that, it was a really open floor area where there'd usually be like big carpets, and then on those carpets there'd be like a piece of dungeon furniture. Like there would be a spanking horse, there would be a rack, there would be a cross, you know. And then they actually had, until to this day, this is like my favorite bondage wall, and at some point in time I would love to like recreate it and have it for my own space. But they had this really interesting bondage wall in the back, and then they had a pagoda set up, and then they actually had a second back room that kind of changed formats a little bit. There were cages back there, there were chairs. At some point they put like a whole aftercare area back there. There was like a gyno table, there was a winch, there was like a lot of like the odd furniture kind of went in the back. So there was a bunch of stuff. And then they actually had a smaller social area with chairs and couches. And then they had a small kitchen as well for snacks and cool drinks. I think there was maybe like a Keurig or something to make a coffee or hot chocolate with. And then they had like an honor system where if you put in $1, you could get like a soda or something. So that was more or less the setup of the space. It's very low key. Most dungeons I have been to have not been like super expensive, decorated, like mood lighting, like padded leather walls, like fancy wallpaper. Like it's not 50 Shades of Grey. All right. It's very low key. It's something that usually can be easily cleaned, not a lot of maintenance. And if you have somebody in the community who's a woodworker, that's fantastic. So that was sort of the setup for the dungeon, and the actual party itself was they had like a smaller playpen area. There's actually a photographer that was there at the time, where if you wore a certain color of wristband and you gave approval before the party, they would take your photos and they would upload it to like a photo bucket account, and then you could like repost photos of yourself on Fetlife if you wanted to. So the party had photographers at it. There was a playpen area. There was like, I think probably a mosh pit area. I don't remember if it was this party, maybe another one. I think there was like a coloring area or something, because it was kind of like a Little's End, like a petting zoo party. And I actually went with people that I had met on Fetlife that I wanted to be friends with, and they went to, at least I think one of the pair went to my college, and we actually met up specifically so they could like drive me to go to this party and like carpool together so I wouldn't go alone. And I actually, like, I wouldn't recommend like maybe carpooling with somebody you don't really know, but I would recommend going with somebody that you've at least met either through a munch or through the internet, like that you can just meet up and be like, hey, I know you. You're a safe person I know I can talk to. I don't have to be totally awkward. That's great. And I'm really glad I did that, because even though I was in a college town, that dungeon had a really wide range of ages that went to it. So you had people that were my age, you had people that were in their 40s or 50s and above. I don't think there was anyone who was in their like early 30s. Like there was kind of a gulf between like college age and like early middle age and then up. But there was a wide variety of people that went to this party. So I was glad that I went with some people that I already knew, that I talked to them through Fetlife. We'd been messaging for a while at that point by the time we went to the actual event. So I felt like, you know, we weren't like, I wasn't giving them my like social security number or anything, but I knew them enough to know that I wanted to socialize with them in person, and going to a party and meeting them there was really great to do. And so we went, and I basically spent a lot of the time in the petting zoo area. Another learning moment for new subs. I've talked about this part quite a bit, but I interacted with somebody who I think was in a bear costume, like a cartoonish, almost like, was it like Ryakuma, like sort of like a cutesy bear outfit, which I realize now is a red flag that I personally have if somebody looks like they are aggressively trying too hard to not seem like a threat, you know, by like wearing cutesy bunny ears all the time as like a very normie looking like cishet guy. If they're wearing super cutesy like bear outfits that actually, I'm thinking about it now, and it's not Ryakuma, it's the other bear that has a name I can't say on YouTube, but that's what it looks like. Don't know if that was intentional or not. He was not a pet player, which confused me, because I was like, why are you dressing up like a bear if you're not a pet player? That doesn't make any sense. But he was talking to me, and we got into this conversation that to this day I will never forget, because he very distinctly was talking to me, and I was just trying to be nice, but I didn't really get like good vibes from him initially, and never ended up getting good vibes at any point. And I was new, and he was asking me what I was into, and I said, oh, well, I think I'm a submissive, but I don't really know exactly what I want to do yet. And he told me, well, it's great, actually, because a dom is supposed to be able to teach a submissive what they like. No. No. And like the dom is, he said like that the dom is supposed to like mold you as a submissive. Hot fantasy, but in reality is actually better as a submissive if you know what you like. You're not just like going with the flow and being like, master, do whatever you want to me. So because I had a really big target on my back, because I was young and I was brand new and didn't know anyone, I was put into a lot of risky scenarios as a result of that. And I like dodged out of the way of that particular conversation. It was just like, oh, okay. And then I like went off to go hang out with the people that I knew and like talk to other people. And I did see a lot of interesting people at this event. Like I met people that I would later hang out with, and that actually like people I knew from college that I would not have expected to be into kink, but were. But I met people that were like dragons and foxes and ravens and raccoons and bears and ponies, and I was there as a puppy, and wolves, and like just all different varieties of people were at this event, all different kinds of pets. And so that immediately inoculated me against the idea that like you had to be one certain thing to be a pet. I didn't mention this, but when I was exploring pet play for like a couple of days, I thought I had to be a kitten because all the information I could find about being a female submissive and pet play was being a kitten. I also thought it had to be like this really hardcore humiliation power exchange thing, which was not my deal. And then eventually, through finding people like Scream Kiwi, who at the time were making videos about kitten play on YouTube, I discovered that it very much did not have to be that thing. And that was a huge sigh of relief because I didn't really think I wanted to do humiliation play. I just thought it sounded nice to like be in a cage, but not in a like, I'm bad and terrible and I'm being reduced to this state because I'm unworthy of humanity. Like, I go in a cage because I'm dog. Like, that's how my brain operates, and at the time, and still operates that way to this day. So I was very thankful that information was online because I found a way to relate to pet play that made sense, you know, for how I wanted to do it. And so I went to these parties, and the pet play one was really fun, had some weird interactions initially, met some people that ended up like being good connections for the kink scene there. And then eventually I want to go to more events and I want to learn more about bondage in particular, because that was something that I initially was like kind of curious about. It wasn't really high in my priority list, but I thought, you know what? I want to learn stuff. There's a class. There's like, I didn't know any of the terminology yet. I think honestly it might have been like a TK class. So I signed up. I didn't have a partner. And once again, I got messaged by somebody who also was going to the event that was a dom or a top. And they were like, hey, I'm also going alone. And you seem like you don't like have anyone to go with. Do you want to meet up and chat and see if we're compatible? If you want to be like tying partners with me for this party and I like for this class. And I was like, sure, why not? So we hung out and we got some lunch and we hit it off really fantastically well. And we decided that we were going to go to this event together and do rope together. And then that bloomed into another connection. And, I told the other person that I was seeing, who was my trainer at the time, that I was seeing this other person. They knew about each other. It was very, like, it wasn't like a hidden thing at all. And I thought I was going to be able to manage that because I was not trying to have any kind of like romantic, intimate connection with any of these people. Like, I was just trying to explore kink. And I thought I could juggle having like, two people I'm seeing platonically, but doing this like kinky intimate stuff with, like, that'll totally work, right? And it did for a while until eventually, like in short order, they both came to me and were essentially like, I don't want you to see this other person anymore. You have to choose one or the other. And that really hurt me. And the choice ultimately like was fairly easy because I feel like I had kind of run the course of what I could learn from this person who was my trainer, who, by the way, was like maybe like 4 or 5 years older than me and maybe had like a couple years of more experience than me. So it wasn't like a huge, it wasn't being trained by somebody who was like 50 years old and had been in the scene for like 35 years. I was being taught by somebody who was like relatively similar in age to me. And even though I'm kind of saying like taught with air quotes, like it was still a good formative experience. Like, I didn't have any consent issues. I felt like my boundaries were respected. I got to do a lot of interesting stuff. And it did help me on my kink journey. So I ended up breaking off with the person who was my trainer, and then I actually ended up having my first DS relationship with the guy who I met trying to go to a rope party. And I feel like I've been talking for half an hour, so this is actually probably a pretty good time to say, this is the end of the chapter for this part of my kink journey. And I think I've hit all of the main highlight points. Obviously, as I got more into kink, I was learning more. I eventually ended up making an Instagram account, and then that got me into talking about pet play in a community sense online, and then talking about it online, I got questions, and I also wanted to show off gear that I was getting on YouTube. So in order to answer questions from people on Instagram more succinctly, because they didn't have any kind of video features on Instagram at that point, like at all, you couldn't even like post multiple photos in one post. It was one photo, text, picture only, no video, no reels, none of that business. Yeah, it was very, very simplistic during that age of Instagram. But I got on YouTube, I started to make videos, and then eventually I started to use it also to like answer general questions about pet play as I was also learning myself, because I found I was one of the few people that had access to a dungeon and was able to take classes in person from actual educators, and I was reading books. I got really into reading books. I got really into, not podcasts at that point yet, but like reading blogs and watching other people talk about it online, and, you know, reading things on Fetlife and participating in groups. There was a lot of activity in those days, not even on main social media platforms, but in general, you know, for kink stuff. And it was a really, really good experience. And I, you know, only grew from there. And, you know, there were other things that maybe didn't always work out. You know, I had issues in relationships with like communication and like how to have a healthy DS relationship. And maybe now that it's been almost 10 years and I haven't really talked about this yet, maybe you all would want to see a follow-up video where I talk about, you know, the trials and tribulations of my first DS relationship and what I learned from that going forward, because in some ways it worked out surprisingly well, and in some ways it really did not. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave that there for now. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope this helped you all if you've been wondering about the kink community and getting into it, what it's really like. I did generally find people to be friendly and helpful. You know, even if I did have to kind of dodge, you know, some people that were a little shady, I think, you know, that I was able to suss it out, you know, relatively well in person, maybe not so much online, but we live, we learn. That's why I talk about stuff like this, is so you guys can, you know, maybe think better than I did about like, I have no friends on this website. I made an account an hour ago. Why is this person messaging me? How would they even be able to find me? Like, well, how would that work? I just didn't even think of that. But yeah, anyways, that's going to be it for now, y'all. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, thoughts, comments, if you all have any like embarrassing first kink stories to share to help other people in our community, I would love it if you would be vulnerable enough with me to do that, because like, I'm willing to do that, but also think it's good to hear from multiple different perspectives. If you got in a little bit older, if you got in right at 18, because I did not, if you're a dom, a top, a switch, and you're getting into the scene as one of those things, I'd love to hear your experiences down below. And if you did enjoy this and are ready, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related subjects. And finally, if you want to support what I do, the best way to do that is with Patreon, which that will be down below. If you do already support over there, thank you so, so much. It means the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.